Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Knights of Last Call Table Talk with our special recurring segment on TTRPG Q&A, where we are going to just take a few hours to hang out and talk. No special topic today, just you, me, some of our closest friends. Maybe we'll do some rants. Maybe we'll do some thoughts, experiments. But for the most part, these streams are for you to ask me questions about, any of a large variety of role-playing games, but also about things going on in your campaign or things going on in the region or area of role-playing games. And, obviously, it's not just about me. It's about everybody here. It's about having conversations, about being part of community. That's a big part of what we do here. So welcome everyone to the stream. Hopefully everybody is doing well. Ryan says, I hope you're doing good, Derek. Yes, I spent yesterday most of the day at the ER. I woke up having some chest pains, and I didn't want to not take that seriously. And so after not getting rid of it with some my Lanta or whatever, I decided I would go to the ER, have them check me out. I was there for like 7 hours, and everything was fine. So, still, they asked me if I'd ever really seen a cardiologist. I said no. So they said, well, we don't know. We don't think there's anything wrong with you. Your heart looks good. They took x-rays, and they hooked me up to the electrodes and everything. But everything was fine. So good news, I guess. But it was still very weird and disturbing set of circumstances. So, fun way to start that off. My EKG looked good. My ECG, whatever, looked good. So Brian said, I hope it wasn't a panic attack. That's what Bob thought it was. Bob had gone through something very similar, he said, with him. And it turns out, he had basically had a panic attack and, from his anxiety and all that other stuff. So I don't know. I didn't feel particularly panicked. Unless, me having to GM an entire party full of poppets counts as panic or anxiety, but I don't think so. But I'm going to see a cardiologist. They're going to probably do like a deep scan or whatever of my heart, and we'll figure it out from there. Yeah, poppet panic. All the more reason, though, for me to get that gym put together so that I can start exercising. Certainly won't help, and certainly won't hurt. It'll definitely make me feel better. So, who do we got here tonight? Well, we got a bunch of people here. Galarian in Death is here. How you doing, Gid? Welcome. Said surprise being able to join the stream. Nice to see you. Lance is here, of course. Unfortunate, welcome. Mighty Dave is on for a light Christmas week. Yeah, my week this week's really light as well. We had a nice little meeting of online Zoom call. Like all 110 people in my company were there. Our CEO said some really, really inspiring stuff. It was really great to hear from him. He's a really amazing guy. I've known him for a long time. And, basically kind of officially kind of kicked us off into the holiday season. So even though I am working tomorrow and Thursday, it's in name only. So, yeah, what's going on? Side-in is here. Joe, how you doing? Hello. Ben, good to see you here. Been hearing good things. Ben was going to take a break this winter season from running games, and especially related to the Knights of Last Call Patreon. Instead, Ben is running like 5 games like this week for the Knights of Last Call Patreon. I believe today it was 7th Sea. There may be another game going on tonight. He might just be here for a little bit. There might be Call of Cthulhu tonight. I'm not sure. So we'll see what's going on with that. Unfortunate things, tonight's topic should be how to make our games more anime. I could not disagree more. Let me get some more music in here. Oh, there we go. All right. What are some of my favorite holiday-themed one-shots and RPG stories? That's a great question. Maybe I'll come back around to that. Rick, great to see you. Damien, here we go. Oh, Damien had the same thing happen to him. Damien got taken away in an ambulance. My God, at least I avoided that part. I drove myself. I was like, look, I don't want to make a big deal about this, but I'm at the emergency room, but it doesn't feel like an emergency, but there's really nowhere else to go. And they're like, oh, how'd you get here? I was like, oh, I drove myself. Don't let me forget to come back around to your question. Glaring in depth about my favorite holiday stories. Ben, your house is on fire. You can rescue your pets and 1 RPG. Which makes the cut? Well, that's tough. I mean, in terms of like most valuable to me, it would probably be my copy of Dungeons & Dragons signed by the creators. So I would probably do that one from terms of just sheer, it's not really worth any money, but in terms of like, sentimental value and irreplaceability, I would probably capture that one first. But if it was terms of like, if it's more metaphysical, like what is the role-playing game that I care the most about that I would probably grab if I had to? That's a great question. It could be some version of D&D. I don't know. Do I have anything that's like irreplaceable? No, I mean it would probably be my copy of D&D signed by Dave and Gary. So, besides, in the end, that's all you really need. Let's see. Okay, Ben is saying MERP is tonight. Okay, and tomorrow is versus D. Got it. Okay, great. Derek, we should give away the OSC box set on Thursday since I'll be on the screen. Damien, that's a great idea. We could totally do that. We're giving away presents. It's a Christmas miracle. Whoa. Tiger Lemur. Tiger, I remember you from you were I think you had to bounce early, if I recall correctly. You say you loved the Fate stream, but is there any advice for getting players into the narrative mindset? My players don't seem thrilled, but I love the flexibility. Tiger Lemur, that's a great question. I mean, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Fate requires buy-in. A lot of these role-playing games require buy-in. I'll be honest with you. You can play D&D without a lot of buy-in. You can have so I have this idea, right, of like a scale of how involved someone is in a game.
Ben tipped $50, wishing you and yours a restful, healthy, and happy holiday.
Ben, that is very, very sweet of you. Thank you very much. I'm wishing you as well a great holidays. I'm sure I'll talk to you before Christmas, buddy. But thank you so much for your incredible support. Ben has been an instrumental member of the success, not just of Nice to Last Call as a community in our Discord and our Patreon, but just helping us out with a lot of real work, doing a lot of our audio setups and audio edits and writing for us. So Ben has been an incredibly generous and incredibly amazing guy. Can't thank him enough. He's a shoo-in. He's a lock-in for our Grand Point Hero Point prize that's coming up here in a couple weeks that we're giving out. We're giving out a ton of prizes to our Patreon, to all of our members. People have chances to win, and people who've earned hero points throughout the whole year are going to get their prizes. But no matter how big the prize is, there's not enough I can do to say thank you to Ben. So thank you so much for that tip, for that holiday greetings, but also just everything else you've done for us the past year and change. So thank you, Ben. Appreciate it very, very, very much. Enjoy your game. I'm sure you got to go. That's true. Unfortunate. That is very true. I think that's true for a lot of people, honestly. Let's see. Okay, so going back to Fate. Yeah, so if you want to scale people like from 0 to 10, like how engaged is this person at a table? It's obviously, someone who's like a 0 is someone who's literally not paying attention. They're on their phone completely. They're not even, they don't know how to play the game. You have to constantly tell them when it's their turn, right? They are just horrible. And then, up all the way up to like a 10. And like a 10 is probably like the game master, right? You are literally paying attention to every single thing that's being said and what's going on. You know the rules, you're engaged. Some games can get away with people who are operating at a level of 3 or 4. You know, people who are just kind of warming a seat. People who are just keeping, you know, you need bodies and they can fill the spot. I believe that there are other games, I don't want to say better games, but different games, where if you have somebody at your table and they are participating at a level of 2 or 3 or 4, they're not just not adding, they're not just neutral, they're actively actually taking away from the group. I think people need to be leaned in. These games only work when people are bought in. So how do you get people involved into the narrative mindset? You got to try it before you buy it. I would start with something very, very simple, like the Fate Accelerated Edition. It's free. It's $5 if you buy the print copy. It's super, super, super streamlined. Make some characters for some people and give them a real simple, easy to understand, one-shot type scenario. And, give each of those characters sort of a goal. I mean, you can't really give them a prize, but try to understand, like Fate. In fact, in Fate Accelerated Edition, they kind of do this Harry Potter, Hogwarts, serial numbers filed off thing as an example. Wizarding school, different houses named after mythological creatures. And you could just make a little adventure, but again, you're not really making an adventure with Fate, so it's more of a situation, right? Insert teacher here is gone missing, and a group of kids think they know where she is or whatever, and they come together. And give each character a unique sort of goal to accomplish in the session that is sort of independent of the main goal. And have them play for that, and have them try to succeed at that, and have them try to use the mechanics to help them tell their story. And if they like that, then maybe you could start to go further down that path. But if people don't want to be participants, if people just kind of want to show up, sit back, watch whatever everybody else is doing, maybe barely pay attention, roll the dice when they're told to, it's going to be really tough for you to get that buy-in. So you can't jump into the deep end. You got to use baby steps. And for me, Fate Accelerated Edition is about as baby steps as it gets. If you want to go, even more baby steps than that, like there are simpler games like Honey Heist or Lasers and Feelings, but those don't really have the narrative mechanics. I think Fate Accelerated Edition is about as bare minimum of a game as you can get and still actually have what I would call narrative mechanics. So that's where I would start. Joe. As a reminder, by the way, a lot of these people are already members of the Nice Last Call Patreon. Maybe you should consider it too. Maybe you're waiting for the new year. I don't blame you on that one. But there's a lot of stuff that to be gained and have some fun advantages for that. These people get to talk to me all the time, whenever they want. In addition to having a load of benefits that comes with being a member of our Patreon, community games and behind-the-scenes footage and Northern Reaches once it reactivates. Currently, we're in our off-season, the winter phase, as we call it. But there's a lot to be seen there. But if you do have a question for me tonight, I'm here to answer your question. Your tips, your super chats are appreciated, but not necessary. And if I do miss your question, I apologize. I'll try to get back to it or ask it again if it's been a while and I seem to have missed it. Obviously, I'm going to make an effort to try to get to those super chats and tip questions first. All right, Joe. Joe asks, question, been playing PF2E for 8 months, playing in 2 separate adventure paths. The combats seem to be over before they start. How do GMs make the combat last longer so it doesn't feel like bad sex?
Dungeons and Dragons. Satan's
Great
game.
question. So Pathfinder 2 combats are quick. There's no beating around the bush on that. If you're coming from 5th edition where they really padded the hit points out, working your way through the creature's hit point banks can be a bit of a slog. Pathfinder 2 is kind of, strike hard, strike fast, very Cobra Kai-esque. The monsters don't have that many hit points, and the damage potential of a Pathfinder 2nd edition character can be pretty dang high. And if you throw in critical hits, it can get out of control real quick. So the fact of the matter is, it's kind of part of the design of the game. Now, that being said, part of the reason that these combats can be so quick is because if you're playing in an AP, which you say you're playing in 2 of them, a lot of these encounters occur in very small places, usually with just maybe 1 or 2 bad guys. And a lot of times it could be the case that with one action, your characters are engaged into melee or wherever they need to be in order to cast spells or shoot their bows or whatever. And then they could spend all the rest of their actions casting spells and strikings, or, doing things that allow you to strike but better. Spell strike or power attack or, double slice. And so the characters don't have anything that's burning off their actions. Now, on the other hand, if the characters are having to spend more actions each round, moving around, using steps, standing up, going to the wall to throw a switch, or deal with a hazard, or aid an ally, or use some sort of skill check. All of those things eat up actions, but they also mean that your characters aren't necessarily just spamming out damage as quickly as possible. And it's also not as bad as it sounds, because those actions, like striding or standing up or moving or helping an ally, don't really take up a lot of time at the table either. Resolving attacks and critical hits, and especially spells, is what takes up the most time at a encounter or during a combat round. So even though your characters are going to still be taking 3 actions on a turn, if they're spending some of those actions doing other things than attacking, their turns can actually be a lot quicker. And while it's still probably going to take the same number of strikes, I mean, that's just the math of the game. If it's going to take, I don't know, let's say 7 average strikes for your party to bring down the monsters, well, if they get to do all 7 of those strikes in just 2 or 3 rounds, then your combat's over in 2 or 3 rounds. But if it takes them 4 or 5 rounds to get in those 6 or 7 strikes, then the combat feels like it has a little bit more room to breathe. I don't think you want it to go too long. I honestly, personally feel like 5 rounds is like a great number for that type of thing. Hello. Oh, there we go. Okay. And so, but at the same time, a 5-round combat can sound really scary to some people because they say, oh, that's going to be 2 hours long. And that's if you're thinking of 5 rounds of combat of just tons and tons of strikes and tons of spells. But if you're doing other things like moving and engaging with hazards and using skills and, doing demoralizes and other acrobatic maneuvers, then it doesn't actually take that much longer because those things resolve really, really quickly. So one of the ways you can solve this, make the rooms bigger. I think all actual plays, all the adventure paths, I think all the rooms are way too small. I know that when I play them on VTT, I always double the size of the grid. So if it's 100 by 100, I make it by 50 by 50 because I just want a bigger room. I want there to be more room to breathe. Secondly, don't be afraid to have your monsters move. Even if they're maybe provoke 1 attack of opportunity, who cares? Move, have them double move, have them go engage the spellcaster or the ranger, the ranged character, and then throw an attack on them. And then watch as the other characters have to spend their turns moving around the battlefield. It'll let the combat breathe a little bit. And instead of just wailing into the really high AC, high hit point fighter or champion, make the group sweat a little bit. Oh my God, that monster just ran over and is attacking our wizard or is attacking our cleric. That can, get the blood racing. But it's also going to mean that the combat's going to feel a lot more dynamic. Don't just stand there. And like I said, stride, that's like the quickest thing that you can do on a battlefield. So take advantage of that, use that, and encourage the party to do that. That's what I would do. That was a great unintentional camera trick. I turned around to look at the books and the camera focused on the books. Well, this camera which I have, which is a Canon EOS R5, has eye auto detected. So when it doesn't detect an eye, it just tries to find whatever else it should focus on. So yes, it was unintentional. Guitar Guy Nick. Question, what do you think about the weird leaks about 6th edition's OGL being stripped away and then not enough monetization of D&D? Well, let's cover a couple things first. They're not going to get rid of the OGL. They might publish 6th edition without the OGL. They did that for 4th edition, for example. 4th edition was not a part of the open gaming license, which meant that most importantly, 4th edition mechanics were never part of the system reference document or the SRD. This is the thing that you can look up. Now, for example, Pathfinder 2 has a system reference document, and you can look up all the rules for that. 3rd edition did the same thing. 5th edition has a system reference document, but it doesn't contain everything. I think people forget that sometimes, but obviously you know what I'm talking about. If you go to the 5th edition SRD, it doesn't have every feat, it doesn't have every subclass. It only has like the basics of 5th edition. So really only Pathfinder 2 and I think 3rd edition D&D like have everything as part of the system reference document. 4th edition was not released under the OGL. It did not have a system reference document. That being said, game mechanics aren't copyrightable. You can copyright certain terms and words, but like Magic is a great example of that. They basically managed to copyright saying tapping, referring to turning a card sideways. But I can make a card game, in fact, most card games do this, and say, I'm going to turn the card, and that means it's used up. And it'll straighten itself at the beginning of my next turn or whatever, and now I can use it again. You can't copyright game mechanics. If I make an RPG and it has strength scores and intelligence scores, you can do that. You don't need the open gaming license or not. So that being the case, I think all that's being completely overblown. And I could talk more about this guitar guy, Nick. We'll get through some other questions. If we run out of questions, I'll rant about this. But too long didn't read. All of these people are idiots. They're all horrible. It's so incredible quick. It's so crazy how quickly they threw 5th edition under the bus for what? A bunch of cheap clicks? I don't even understand what they're doing. It's so weird to me how this whole thing is being perceived. And again, I don't know what every 5th edition player is doing because I don't have insight into that. I can only see, what's going on Twitter and Reddit and Facebook and obviously the internet space of YouTube and stuff and TikTok. But man, people are acting real dumb. Secondly, the not enough monetization of D&D. Well, I mean, they're probably correct. D&D is not very well monetized. So, they're a corporation. They need to make money. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to make money. And, far be it from me. I was on here on what day? I don't even know what day. I was on here one of these days, and I was talking about people should be buying, I was talking about Fate or something like that. No, I don't remember what I was talking about. But yeah, I was talking about people moving from 5th edition to Pathfinder 2. Buy the book. But it's free. Okay. Is that going to pay the people who work at Paizo? No. They don't owe you anything. You're stealing it from them. They are being gracious and kind and making it available to you. But if you're playing a game that someone else created and they put their blood, sweat, and tears into it, and that's how they pay their bills, I view it, you're stealing from them. So, they may be giving it away for free, but I think you're still stealing it from them. You're like one of those people who has money and goes to a PDF and it says, pay what you want. And there's a default suggestion of $5 for the PDF and you change it to $0. You're a piece of shit and you shouldn't be in these hobbies. End of story. That's how I feel about it. So, anyways, there's no other excuse for that. John is here. What's happening? What's going on, buddy? John was recently on just this past Saturday. We talked about Fate for a couple hours. John and I gave away some Fate core rulebooks thanks to John's generosity, and it was pretty awesome. It was a lot of fun. Let's see. All right, catching up here on the chat. Here's a question from Guitar Guy. How do you account for a Magus in Pathfinder 2nd Edition critting? You don't. Even on an elite, they one-shot any creature they crit on with a shocking grist. It's hard to calculate for. That's what their class does, Guitar Guy Nick. They spend a lot of actions to do that crit or that hit. And if they don't crit, it's nice, it's impressive, but it's not that impressive. And then they're going to spend the next round, reloading that and trying to go again. But no, that is what the Magus does. It is a high risk, high reward type class, and that is what you are describing is exactly what they are designed to do. Now, that being said, Pathfinder 2 does give you the tools such as True Strike, stacking buffs and debuffs like heroism or inspire courage, inspire greatness, the aid action, stacking clumsy, getting somebody prone or flanking them. And you might end up in a situation where you have a Magus who's critting 50% of the time or higher. Yeah, that's pretty great. Good for them. I mean, your group is doing the thing that they made the game to do. I don't know how else to tell you that. My suggestion is I would do nothing. And that's like saying, maybe you haven't experienced this, Guitar Guy Nick, but it's like saying, I was playing a game, and then I had my monster, this big monster, and he did a bunch of damage to one of the guys, and then the cleric used one of his heals and healed him basically back to full. It's like my monster didn't even do anything. Yeah, that's what the cleric is there for. The cleric is there to basically wave their hand, expend one of their heal spells, and just completely heal all the damage that someone has taken, maybe over a round or 2 rounds from your monster in one fell swoop. That's what the cleric does. That's what makes them cool. Well, the Magus is the same way. So, yeah, I would definitely not be too worried about that. Kid says, you want longer combats? Add doors. Damien says, don't allow uncommon classes. Magus is not uncommon, Mr. Williams. Derek quote for a t-shirt, all these people are idiots, they're horrible. Yeah, that's true. Yes, they need to make money. We don't need to spend ours too. Joe, that's correct. You're allowed to vote with your wallet. I don't have a problem with somebody saying they want money for their game. I'm not going to give it to them. That's a fair deal. To me, that's totally reasonable. I mean, there's a lot of things I don't spend my money on. Full stop. And I don't feel bad about that. But if I'm going to, take myself an advantage of something, and I'm in a position to do so, I think it is your obligation to pay for things. I mean, what's the old saying? Don't go out to eat if you can't also afford to tip. I mean, this is the same thing. So, now John makes a great point going back to this. Even if 6E doesn't get released under the official, an OGL umbrella, it does not change the fact that 5th edition is. That's true. They can't backwards take that away. But that being said, look. The fact of the matter is, whatever edition Wizards of the Coast is supporting, that's the edition of D&D. 4th edition came out, people didn't like it. A lot of people didn't like it, or it wasn't for them, or whatever. Or they really liked their 3rd edition. And there's no reason why people couldn't have kept producing 3rd edition material, but they didn't. Like, whichever edition of D&D is current carries a lot of weight. There's just no way around that. I don't know how to get around that. The only reason that we perceive 3rd edition as sort of carrying on is because 3rd edition got piezoified into Pathfinder. Now, would somebody piezoify 5th edition and create? I mean, there's already several versions what essentially are of what is Pathfinder, but for 5th edition, right? There's whatever EN World came out with, Advanced 5e or something. Right? So, I mean, those already exist. People can do that. Question. Speaking of stealing, what do you think of AI art? Well, I think the technology is incredible and amazing. I don't think there's a whole lot that you could do about it. I think it's going to redefine copyright laws, and I think it's going to be a very messy, kind of involved thing. But, I am not a artist in the traditional sense, but I did do photography. And I can tell you that when I would go in to do a photo shoot, or say at a wedding, one of the things I would do is I would go onto Instagram, or I would go on to, Tumblr, or I would go on to a variety of different, 500 pixels, and I would look at what not just famous wedding photographers were doing, or famous portrait photographers were doing. I would look at, I had some of my favorites, people who weren't huge successes, but I liked their work, I followed them, and I would be inspired by their shot. Oh my God, that was a gorgeous shot on the lakefront with the sun and the trees. Am I inspired by that? Absolutely. Might I try to recreate that photo? Absolutely. With my clients or with my, models. Did I do that? All the time. Is that my work? Of course it is. And that is what art is. Art is the instance of being inspired and learning and taking from other people and synthesizing it into your own. Ben, take care. Enjoy MERP. That's wild that you're playing MERP tonight and versus D tomorrow. You're a crazy person, but I love you. Take care. God bless, my friend. I look at the people who do like I watch one, Phase Runner. He's on YouTube, right? He does like the photo hacks where he takes a couple different photos and then he like photoshops them together. And like, is that original art? I don't know. It seems pretty cool to me, but I don't, I think there is a problem if, people are passing AI art off as like their own original work. But that's, like I've heard it has apparently started, AI generated work has apparently started to make its way into Adobe Photostock. And that makes sense to me, right? That's capitalism in a nutshell. As soon as it became a thing, I'm sure probably some organization, maybe overseas, maybe, some, shady operation in LA, or something, some crazy shop set up in Miami or something, started like bulk generating AI art and uploading it to all of the different, stock sites to get paid for it. That's a little bit more, upsetting. Yeah. So yeah, again, I'm not currently in the photography game, but yeah, I mean, it's a thing. I mean, I don't know. You know who I'd ask? I would go ask all of the factory workers who used to have jobs and then they built a robot that did their job for them and ask them what they did and how they felt about it. I don't know. Mike, all is well. Thanks for asking, buddy. Regarding the monetization, it's when I started to feel like being milked like a cash cow. I mean, yeah, kind of. They're a company. They're trying to make money. If I'm a customer, if I play D&D, but I bought, the player's handbook, and a couple books once, 10 years ago, is that Wizards of the Coast I'm not helping out Wizards of the Coast. If all my players play and not a single one of them owns or buys a book, we're all D&D players, but that doesn't help. That doesn't help Hasbro. And that's who they need to be worried about. I know that's horrible. And to be fair, that's one of the beautiful things about role-playing games. Wizards of the Coast could go out of business. There's role-playing games I play where the company's out of business, but they can't take that away from you. At least not while it's in a hardback book. Try telling that to all the people who only play on D&D Beyond or only play on virtual tables. You're in a rougher spot than I am. So, we don't tip in Australia. We pay a livable wage. Joe, I prefer that. And that is actually a better way to do it. Because why put the onus on the customer? It should be on the business owner, right? It should be on the employer to make sure that their employees are making the money that they need to live. But that is not the culture here, so that's how we're into there. A5E level up. That's the 5th edition Pathfinder right there. Let's see. Art stations, Shutterstock, and every comic artist alive is rallying against it. I mean, yeah, of course they are. I mean, their livelihood is at stake, and rightfully so. I mean, they have every right to want to rally against it. I think that's totally fine. So I'm noticing a market increase in videos lately titled "Why I'm Leaving D&D." I'm not gonna lie, Ryan. I told my Patreon that I was considering making a video, kind of somewhat being a troll, but being like, why I finally decided to start playing D&D. Because it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I can't even begin to describe, what is going on there. It's embarrassing for those people. I'm saying it's embarrassing for those people. Blaine, you're absolutely 100% correct. I said that a little bit during my shorts when I was in Vegas. I have a lot to say. Like, I heard a lot of people. I mean, okay. Come with me, people. Come with me just on a quick journey of why I'm mad all the time. Okay? I was in Vegas, like Las Vegas, like on vacation. And I saw it was because most of that call, by the way, was about Magic the Gathering. It was about Magic the Gathering, a game that I'm not currently very engaged with, which is to say I'm probably more engaged with Magic the Gathering than most people, but compared to where I used to be, not as engaged. And it was a call, okay? It wasn't an investor call. It was a fireside chat put on by the analyst at UBS, okay? With Chris Cox, Cynthia Williams. Who are those people? CEO of Wizards and of Hasbro and president of Wizards. And they were talking mostly about Magic the Gathering. And a small part of this call, came up about D&D. I thought it was interesting. I'm on vacation in Las Vegas, America's playground. I've got $2,000 in my pocket. I've got craps tables far as the eye could see. And what did I do? I spent 45 minutes, that's all it took, to listen to this stupid call before I decided to say anything about it. YouTube is not my living, and I don't really talk about D&D. And yet, all of these people instantaneously made videos saying incorrect things because they read about it and they got all their information from some Dicebreaker article or from something that someone else said in one of their videos, which they got off of Twitter, which somebody else got off of a Dicebreaker article. It's embarrassing. Just do your due diligence. Listen to the call yourself, and then discuss it. And then the number of people who started calling yelling fire and all this stupid stuff. You had people out there who didn't even know what the OGL was talking about it. It was so embarrassing for so many people. It's just like, have some dignity. I get it. We're living the modern era of social media. All of these people are fucking parasites. They're all just in it for a quick buck. They're worse than Wizards of the Coast because, for all the people out there, and I say this as someone who has a Patreon, all of these people out there bitching about trying to give Wizards of the Coast money, YouTube creators, bitching about people having to give Wizards of the Coast money every month to play in their game, but make sure to join my Patreon. Fuck you. Like, you're such a hypocritical piece of shit. It's just like so outrageously disingenuous. yeah, it's just horrible. All right. So, anyways, you were correct, Blaine. They were talking about the brand. And, that can mean a lot of things. Yes, they did specifically talk about players and getting players to be more incentive to spend money. Something that has been the case for, I don't know, a million years. Okay? Go back to 2nd edition, look at the Player's Option series, look at the player books, look at 3rd edition, look at the Splat books. Okay? So yeah, of course it is. And yes, they're talking about the brand. They're saying, look, there's a lot of money in this brand. If we stick D&D on something, people are going to buy it. And we're a company, we should be doing that more. Full stop. So, yeah. Anyways. So it's horrible. Also, last thing I'm going to say, and by the way, I'm a pretty liberal person, okay? Free healthcare, yes, right? I'm all for it. Wizards of the Coast, D&D is not healthcare. It's not food. It's not schooling, okay? You're not entitled to it. It's so optional. It's beyond optional.
An underhyped benefit
okay?
of it. Enough people to nerd out about any topic you can think of. Cooking, health, and exercise.
Boothby, thank you for that tip. Boothby was driving and still wanted to hype the Patreon. But he is right. We do have a lot of stuff going on there beyond gaming. We are a real community of real people. We're sharing our real life, wins and our real life losses. We talk about our families. We talk about our hobbies. We talk about exercise and books and movies, and all of those things are very, very, very passionate. A lot of really, really great discussions in there too. So, but yeah, it's a luxury good, Guitar Guy Nick. You were correct, 100%. These are people. These are people who don't need to buy this, and okay, so they've priced you out of it. You don't have an intrinsic right to play someone else's game. D&D is not owned by the people. And it kind of is, because they gave it to you for free for so long anyways. Go play one of the million games out there that are free and will always be free, and be happy with that. I just don't understand it. It's just irritating to me. That's all. For MTG, Ryan, number one, rowing is great. I loved it. When I used to do CrossFit back in the day, I loved those, what do they call something 2, cycle 2, fabric 2, something 2 rowers. I like them. It was really good. 4 Magic the Gathering packs for $1,000. Is that horrible? Absolutely. Is it gross and destructive? Is it anything that I want to be a part of? No. But they can do whatever they want. I mean, that's their call. Now, if it erodes confidence and it sinks the company, okay. Well, too bad. So sad. The difference is, Magic the Gathering, to a certain extent, for a certain type of player. If you're the type of player who just plays with the cards they have, and if Magic the Gathering went out of business, if Wizards of the Coast closed off, if Hasbro shut down, you could keep playing Magic forever, you'd be totally fine. But if you're someone, maybe like me, who used to be interested in the rotating formats and new sets coming out, or you like to draft and you want new product coming out so you can have fun experiencing and discovering the new game space, then Magic needs to be alive for you to keep doing that. But, D&D, come on. There's enough stuff on the wall behind me to keep all of us entertained for the rest of our lives. So it's so outrageous that we need anything. Limited is great, and it's all I basically play anymore ever since I got out of the game. And when I say get out of the game, I meant grinding, flying, driving, going to foreign countries to play Magic the Gathering to try to grind my way onto the Pro Tour. Luckily, they killed the Pro Tour, and when they did the first time around, and when they killed it, I got out of the game, and I haven't come back since, and I'm okay since then. You know what, Strat? You're not even wrong about that. But, there is something fun about brand new cards that you've never seen or played with before. I'll say that about actual booster draft as opposed to cube draft. But I think cube draft is awesome, too. So. Yeah, WotC's not too big to fail. I mean, TSR failed. What we perceive as D&D was owned and created by the TSR Inc., Technical Studies Rules of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. It was in existence from 1974, 1975 until 1998, when it was bought, owned, and traded via a triple-way subsidiary stock exchange program with AEG and, you guessed it, Wizards of the Coast. And that was before, by the way, Wizards of the Coast. And then Wizards of the Coast got bought by Hasbro. So this thing has already been bought and sold. And by the way, why did TSR get sold? Because it was going out of business. They were bankrupt. They could not pay their books. They could not pay their shippers. Read the books. They're really good. I got a couple of them up here. We got Of Dice and Men. That one's pretty good. Slaying the Dragon is really good. Just enjoy it. John says, I'm going to need a beer after this stream. Have one on me. Thank you, John. I will. Maybe a shot of something. I got some Aberlore. I got some Aberlore downstairs. Maybe that's it. So yeah. Blaine, I think that's another great example here. When Wizards of the Coast finally acquiesced and started producing stuff on the PDF, they gave it away. It's all out there. You can just go buy every game that you ever want. And so you just do your own thing. And play an old game and experience it. And again, people lived and died playing this game under the auspices of one edition of D&D. And they didn't need everything being created for all time. So I'm sure we'll be fine no matter what. Also, I'm sure they make mistakes, but these people are not that stupid. They're not that stupid. Look at 4th edition. I like it, but it's widely reviled, and everyone says it killed Wizards of the Coast. Did it? It did it? It didn't look... D&D was still around. They published books for 4th edition for the entire life cycle of its edition. And then they stopped making books for like 6 months, and then they released 5th edition, and we've had that ever since. So if the biggest thing to ever go wrong at Wizards of the Coast didn't sink the company, what makes you think that right now, when they have like the biggest player base they've ever had, with the most eyes on the game that they've ever had, making the most money that they've ever had, that you think this is the time when the game is going to go down? People are just, they are trying to profit off of your worry and concern. They're being rabble rousers. They are just trying to ride the hype. There's an element here of cancel culture, which again, sometimes people do horrible things and they probably should be called out for it, and I'm all for it. But I don't think they've done anything here horrible. Hell, all of this stuff about the OGL got canceled happened because Wizards of the Coast, God forbid, wanted to send some confidential information to some content creators and ask them to sign an NDA. And people lost their minds, as if this stuff doesn't happen literally thousands of times a day. There's a person who isn't even, they were not even published, okay? And they said, Derek, would you take a look at my stuff? I'd love to get your thoughts and affinities on it. And I said, sure. And he said, but I'm going to have you sign an NDA first before you take a look at it. And I said, well, I'm not going to sign your NDA because I just don't want to be involved in anything involving signing an NDA and having it go to my lawyer. But I totally respect, I'm not like mad at you. I totally respect that you want someone to sign an NDA to look at your stuff. Like, just look at it. Like, it's not a big deal. Yeah. Anyways. Let's see. Anyways, yeah, that rumor, that whole OGL canceling thing happened because they asked people to sign NDAs. And now there's like this stupid hashtag going around, like hashtag free D&D. It's very stupid. And I'm not, look, I'm Kermit. I'm Kermit sipping my tea. I'm going to let these people just get it out. They can do whatever they want. And I'm just going to be sitting back, enjoying role-playing games, talking to you fine people. Because it's just so is just so ridiculous. And they will do anything to just keep the hype meter going and just stir up drama and even if all of that was true, which is fine. This is a game that these people have been just like shilling and profiting off of for like a decade. And then they just immediately throw it under the bus for quick views. That's the part that bothers me probably the most. Yeah. Anyways, all right. Well, I won't rant the whole night. Okay. Somebody a question about my favorite holiday adventure. It's a little. I don't do a lot of holiday themed things, but many years ago, I kind of sort of maybe told the story. I don't know if I told the story before, but many years ago, we used to play Mutants and Masterminds all the time. And for those of you who don't know, Mutants and Masterminds is a game produced by Green Ronin, where it's a superhero game, and it uses the D20 system. So it uses the 3rd edition OG version of the OGL, heavily modified so that you can play with superheroes. And we had done several campaigns of these. We called them volumes, and we were doing volume 2. And we did a Christmas episode. We called them issues. We called our sessions issues. So every session was one issue of the comic. There were a couple 2-parters, double issues that were basically 2 sessions, but everything was essentially one session long. And it was a series of sort of events, and there'd be some Monster of the Week episodes, and then there would also be some like kind of part of the myth arc or part of the arc episodes. And we had a couple of interesting characters, but one character was Mr. Smith, Aaron Smith from the channel, and he had a character named Joe Armstrong. And Joe Armstrong was this like stereotype of all like these 80s macho, sort of Rambo and Predator, Schwarzenegger, these really sort of action hero 80s type thing. So he was sort of a mocking caricature of this. And there was this really bad, really cheesy movie. I think they did a couple of them in the 80s called The American Ninja. And it was about, of course, a white American dude who was somehow the best ninja or something. And he was a military guy. And so Joe Armstrong, which of course itself is like the super stereotypical name, was the American Ninja. And his character had swords and knives, but also, an M16. And so we were getting close to the holidays, and so I did a kind of a Christmas themed episode where set in the city of New Cleveland, not Cleveland, but New Cleveland, in our alternate LEL verse, as we called it. There was the Christmas tree lighting and in public square, and it was attacked. It was attacked by a gigantic robot snowman towering several stories high, along with a variety of animated nutcracker soldiers, right? And everyone's screaming and yelling, and there's a big robot, and they just take him down, and then this person appears on public television, and he goes, hello, I'm the toy maker. I demand a bounty of $1 million delivered to me. Christmas is canceled. And he was this over-the-top villain, the toy maker, and he was mad at Christmas because, they never respected his genius. And so anyways, so the group encounter him a couple times throughout the rest of the session, and then they discover where his secret lair is. And I remember the scene, and Joe Armstrong, the American Ninja, climbs to the top of this sort of factory warehouse, and there's like a big one of those big, on top of like a warehouse or a factory, there's one of those big glass skylights, and he sees the toy maker down there. He's on his factory floor. These nutcracker robot soldiers are being made. And, Joe decides to take him out. So like he mounts like a like a repelling line on the roof, and he leaps through the glass, sliding down the black repelling line in one hand. He's got his M16 in the other hand, and he's just like breaks through the roof, sliding down, just like, brrr, you know, and Aaron even described it. He's like, I kick the glass, it goes shattering, I'm sliding through the air, screaming, spraying bullets, just, and, you know, he's ready. And then, like, you know, the M16, his clip runs out, so he's still falling through the air on the rope. He lets go of the gun, it clatters, you know, he draws his katana as he lands in a really dramatic pose, prepared to have this ultimate showdown. And he lands just like ready for the fight. The rest of the heroes are coming in, and they look to, you know, to quote Dungeon World, they look to me to see what happens next. And I thought about it for like half a second, and I had, you know, stats and stuff planned. I had a whole big showdown at this toy factory, and, you know, at the end of the day, I was like, well, this guy is just some like twerpy computer science guy, right, with a chip on his shoulder, and I just go. They're looking at him, and I go, ah, you shot me, you son of, oh God, oh, I'm dying, oh my God, please call an ambulance, oh my God, you shot me, I can't believe you shot me. And like, Aaron's like, what? And he's like, dude, I'm just a guy who makes toys. You freaking shot me like 3 times. I'm dying. Can you please call an ambulance? I am seriously dying here. And Aaron's like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean. Oh God. Oh, I'm sure you're gonna be okay. Yeah. Can somebody? Can one of you call the ambulance? I'm sorry. He's like, oh God. And then like I just cut to a narration of like the ambulance arriving, and, you know, they get him onto a stretcher, and he's just sitting there still just moaning, and then they wheel him out on, you know, into the ambulance, close the doors, it goes off. And, you know, the heroes kind of look around, and they kind of go, okay, well, I guess that's it. And that's like how the episode ended. And that was it. That was the end of the toy maker. He just got carried away in an ambulance after getting shot once. Because it was just at that moment, I was like, no, you shot an ordinary guy with a bunch of M16 bullets. He's dead or dying, and he's not going to fight. So that was, for me, I don't do a whole lot of holiday themed things. So that was probably the best one that we ever did. And that was a lot of fun. So.
And let's get ready to RPG.
Exactly, Strat. It was a fun subversion of expectations, right? Because, you know, we're playing this big, you know, very narrative superhero game, and suddenly I just went like full simulation, and it was so hilarious, and it was just obviously so funny. Alex asks, do you know any TTRPG that has interesting spellcrafting mechanics where you can create your own spells? You know, there's a lot of D20 systems which have tried, and it's arguable whether or not you succeed or not. I know one that was very popular back in the Pathfinder 1 days was called Spheres of Power. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but some people were. And I'm sure you can get that for real cheap. Let's take a look. Anybody know if that's still around? Looks like it's still out there. It's even part of the SRD. Well, look it up, Spheres of Power, and see if you like that. Oh yeah, there were Words of Power in Ultimate Magic from Pathfinder 1. I was really not a fan of that. But yeah, you know, overall, the problem with those systems, Alex, you know, D20 is already very complicated, and you know, it can take a while to make those stuff up on the fly. You know, I've played games that had extemporaneous magic creation, but they were very low crunch, more narrative style games where that worked a lot easier. So it is kind of tough to do that. And so traditionally, you know, I've kind of stayed away from those mechanics as such. Yeah. All right. Well, we got 1 hour down. What about anybody else? Any other questions? Guitar Guy. Derek, would you ever run a Bloodlords AP by PF2? No. It's really well written, and I can't recommend it enough. I think you'd like it. It's so full of flavor. Guitar Guy Nick, I'm going to say no, and I'm not going to say no for the reason that you might think I would say no. I'm going to say no because, number one, the theme of Bloodlords doesn't really interest me at all, to be completely honest with you. But the real reason is I'm so kind of over adventure paths. They are just so inimical and to my style of gaming. I am more anxious and nervous and uncomfortable playing a adventure path than I am making something up 100% of, like, on the spot. Zero prep. Because, it just comes down to what you want out of a role-playing game experience and what you want out of a entertainment experience, period. And, the way the direction that actual plays have gone is just not the direction that I really want to be a part of. It's interesting. So all RPGs are about stories. But we need to define what that means. And what it means to me isn't, we need like a better term for it. It's not a narrative, right? It's not a, beginning, middle, end, plot, characters, protagonists, motivation, rising action, betrayals, red herrings, hero's journey, all very well defined. Because I will freely admit that to do that really well, you probably do need to have that planned out in advance. And people have been doing this for a very long time. They're called books. And they've taken that element and they've put it into these adventure paths and basically sort of a choose your own adventure narrative. And you get to be the one rolling the dice. And it creates a lot of systemic issues if things don't work out a certain way and you're worried you're going to ruin book 6 while you're playing book 2. And I don't want to have to worry about any of that. But it's deeper than that, Nick. What it is that's not the kind of story I want to tell. I don't necessarily want to tell a narrative. I don't necessarily want my story to be this quote unquote compelling narrative. In other words, let me put it another way. If you were to take the events, and let's give ourselves a little bit of rope here and a little bit of leeway. If you were to take the events of your sessions that happened during your campaign while you're playing an adventure path, and you were to record them, and then you were to give them to, say, a writer, and they were to create a novel of the events that happened. Yes, there's going to be some bumpy roads along the way, but for the most part, you're going to get the rough translation of a story that people would probably want to read. The kind of stories that I want to make would never be something that anyone want to read. The story I just told you about Joe Armstrong breaking through the skylight, sailing down through the sky on a rappelling rope, blasting away an M16, and then the guy screaming to death about please call an ambulance, I'm dying here. Now that was one of the funnier little anecdotes in my arsenal, but those are the kind of stories I like to tell. I didn't know that was going to happen. Aaron didn't know that was going to happen. Nobody knew that was going to happen, but it happened. Now, it's not a story for you, Nick. It's not a story for anybody here. I shared it with you all, and I hope you enjoyed it. But that story was for me and my friends. That story was for us at the table. That's my story. It doesn't need to be anybody else's. And I don't care if anybody else gets it. I don't care if anybody else gets to experience that cool moment. That was our moment. And it doesn't need to be cool to anybody else. It doesn't need to be meaningful to anybody else. It's only meaningful to me and my friends, and that's good enough for me. And so those are the kind of experiences that I'm looking to generate. And I don't think adventure paths help me get there. I think they're tremendous resources for many people. And if you enjoy the hell out of them, all the better. I think they're tremendous value for the money that they charge for them. But for me and for most of my group and friends, it's not the kind of experience that we like. All right. I don't know if I missed anything here. Anthony wants to try running Kingmaker, but lean heavily into the sandbox aspect. What do you need Kingmaker for, Anthony? You can just do it yourself. Ryan, have you ever played an evil character? Well, I've mostly been a DM my whole life. I've certainly played evil characters for short stints, like one-shots and stuff. But long-term, the closest I ever came to playing an evil character was more of like a really decidedly neutral character, probably on his way to evil. He was a wizard named Asinius, and he was very loyal to his group and to his companions, the Band of the Burning Hand. But he didn't really care about like saving the day or being a hero. But I don't necessarily know that makes him evil. So, he was very ambivalent to the needs or worries of other people. And that would certainly be probably the closest that I ever came to playing an evil character, I would say. Let's see. Gossamer, what do you got for me, Gossamer? Gossamer says, 100% agree. I've been strictly an APGM since I started years ago, but now I feel completely over it. I realize I've been burning out because I'm just bored knowing how the story is going to go. Yeah. When 4th edition disrupted, the entire universe, and I suddenly found myself with a lot more time on my hands at Gen Con, and I discovered, Dungeon World and Fate and all these other games, and really started exploring them. One of the things that, again, came to me from Apocalypse World that just stood out so great was play to find out what happens. And it meant it from both sides. And there was like this moment of enlightenment where I realized that, even within D&D, my favorite sessions were the ones that surprised me, the ones that went in a completely different direction, the ones where I found myself, at the mercy of the tides and the waves of fate. And, I can remember being a 3rd edition DM and fighting against those tides and against those waves. And let me tell you, you can't win that fight. The tides, the waves, they'll get you in the end. You're just constantly fighting a battle of worry about, are my players going to kill this NPC that's supposed to get away? Or, and then you're like sitting there going, like rolling your eyes because you're like, if they do kill him, I'm like, oh, what am I going to do then? Do I have to rewrite the whole adventure? Do I have to come up with some bullshit excuse for why they came back? It's like you're more worried about what's going to happen in the adventure than having fun. And I just don't like feeling that way. I like just saying, like, because here's the thing, because we've all been here. Every single person in this stream has been here. There's a moment you're playing and somebody or a group of somebodies, your players, has a really fun, crazy, or zany idea, or they make an incredible roll. And you have this splitting moment where you realize that is a lot of fun and that's the direction you want to go. But you also realize that doing that means disastrous impacts to this pre-written or preconceived notion of what this story is supposed to be or should be about. And you're maybe even selfishly, you're like, this would be a lot more work for me. This is about to be a moment where if I let this happen, if this goes on, I'm going to be doing a shitload more work than I ever wanted to do. And I don't know what you do in those situations. Some of you might fudge the dice, or you come up with some bullshit excuse or whatever. Or maybe you say, okay, we're going to go with it. And that should be a fun, incredible moment. But it's tampered a little bit because you go, oh my God, I'm going to have to rewrite all of book 3. You know, you're just like, you can't be and live in that moment. And man, I don't want to feel like that anymore. I just don't. I don't want to feel like that anymore. So I'm trying not to. Let's see. Gid says, Derek, I agree. The story is for you and your friends. That's what the narrative should be. I'm kind of over APs too. Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, you take someone like Gid, who literally has a channel, Galarian in Depth, all about exploring the lore of Galarian, the countries and the organizations. What you're capable of generating or exploring is way more interesting to you than anything that the Paizo writers could possibly come up with, because you already know what you want to explore and what you want to look into and what you want to do with the setting. So I completely understand from your point of view. Boothby. Says his players are not worth the effort of homebrewing. Oh, that's funny. That said, I enjoy. Yeah, look, you can read an AP, you can be inspired by the AP, you can take maps from the AP, concepts or whatever, and throw them in however you want. But again, they're a tool, and you should use them. And maybe that means running them. I don't think APs are wrong for you if that's what works for you and your group. If you are enjoying them, if you don't have any of these issues that I have, Mazel tov, you're blessed. But I do have these issues, and I struggle with them. But here's the tricky part. Here's the rub. Here's the problem. The problem is games like Blaze in the Dark or Dungeon World or Lady Blackbird or Fate or whatever, what have you. These are games that have very little mechanical complexity, especially on the game master side. And so if my players decide on the whim to say, you know what? I don't think we should go in through, trying to get an invitation by pretending to be members of the royal elite and sneaking in to the part. I think we should go in through the sewers and try to do a stealth infiltration later that night, in the middle of the night. Everyone will be drunk or sleeping or just not caring. We'll sneak in through the sewers and we'll come up that way. Just completely off the cuff. In those cases, in those games, I go, yeah, that sounds great too, because there's nothing for me to prepare. There's nothing for me to look up. There's nothing. It's just me setting some DCs and me coming up with some obstacles, like narratively. But a game like Pathfinder 2 and even 5th edition D&D and even 4th edition D&D, a game of which, again, I am fond, they are complex games. And, while I think having random encounters and the like can be somewhat useful and random things of that nature, just pulling a monster out of the Pathfinder 2 bestiary and running it and using it and having it be like an appropriate and fun challenge, that's tough. That's tough even for someone with as much experience as I have. These creatures are very complex. There's a lot of text on them, and quite frankly, I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my players at my table if I'm spending the next 15 minutes having to read this creature's stat block, let alone having to come up with a battle mat. And even if it's like, oh, you don't need a battle mat, you can just draw one. Okay, so now I'm drawing a battle mat, and suddenly this cool extemporaneous idea turns into like this 35-minute process of me flipping through bestiary books or going through archives of Nethys and drawing or battle mat or finding a new one and loading it in, and it's like, that is very frustrating. It is very frustrating. And that is just one of the downsides of D20. There's a solution to that, but not everybody wants to do that. No, but not everybody wants that solution. All right, what else we got here? KC's making some chicken wings. Sounds good. What else we got here? World building is one of the most fun things about homebrewing to me. Yeah, world building is fun. I've really gotten into the habit of doing it with my party, and I think that makes it so much fun. I love collaborative world building. For me, that's top tier because everybody is bought in to the setting that they help create. And then you don't have this awkward problem where they're playing characters who are supposed to be living in this world and should, know how many, moons the world has and should know how, the basic nations of your world work because they live in this world. And you get this awkward moment where the GM just has to just give all of this, dialogue to the party to just explain things to them. And this sort of just endless exposition, right? Just endless exposition. And the players are so bored. But if you all collaboratively make the world together, everybody knows what's going on. They've all been a part of the world creation. And so they can all just say, oh, yeah, I remember that. I remember when the army from the north came and sacked the city. And that's why there's military law. And remember how I added the part where the Lord Governor now it makes it so that the firstborn daughter of every household is indoctrinated into the royal guard. Like that was one of my cool details. Maybe I'll be one of those royal daughters who chafes at her, or maybe she just got out of her royal service and now she's a badass mercenary looking for whatever adventure. Point is, they know about all this because they helped build it, and it's theirs. I really like that. Here comes Strat with the cynicism and the depression. Cheat sheet on how to run any PF2 creature. Using anything longer than 3 sentences is not worth it unless skimming reveals certain keywords in it. When in doubt, stride, strike, strike. Joe says, explain homebrewing with your party. Joe, there's kind of several ways to do this. Way number one is to buy. I hesitate to say buy it because you really don't need it. I'm not saying like pirate it or steal it. I'm saying it doesn't really do a whole lot. But there is a game by a gentleman by the name of Ben Robbins, and he makes a game called Microscope. And Microscope is a game that is a collaborative world building game. But you can take that fun little game and turn it into a kind of a fun little thing. A world building exercise for your D&D game or for your 13th Age game or for your Call of Cthulhu game or whatever, what have you. And it's got some good stuff in there about, setting palettes, what people want to be part of the campaign, what people don't want to be about the campaign, important for setting lines and veils and boundaries. But also the process of going around and building up a Microscope campaign can be a lot of fun. The other thing to take a look at, and I don't think it was ever sold, so I think you're going to just have to probably Google it. Oh God, what's it called? Don't remember what it's called. I had it literally in my head. There is Okay, it's called Dawn of Worlds, and you'll just Google it. Just Google Dawn of Worlds, and the first link or something will take you. Hopefully, you can find the PDF. But this is an old PDF that was made by somebody a long time ago, and Dawn of Worlds is a game where you and your players essentially each temporarily pretend like you're a deity. You're actually creating the world. It's got some very basic mechanics for like drawing a map collaboratively and like raising mountain ranges from the ocean floor. And you're kind of in competition, but kind of in collaboration. Nick, take care, buddy. Good to see you. Thanks for the questions and all that other stuff. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, Dawn of Worlds is another one that I would definitely check out. So again, I don't think they ever published it. So you may have to like, search around, find the PDF. It was always for free. I mean, this thing's been around for, 15 years or something like that. It's been a long time that's been around there. But so yeah. Ryan Adams, is that the season-based one? No, you are thinking of A Quiet Year, I think, Ryan Adams. That is different. That's more of a storytelling game and about communities and survival by Avery Alder, which comes in a little bag. Actually, this is The Quiet Year. Great game. Incredible fun game. And you do draw a map. So you Ryan, you make total sense that why you thought of that. But Salt Goblin apparently knows what I'm talking about. Dawn of Worlds, a lot of fun. Highly recommend it. Have a lot of fun with it. I know we have many, many times. So yeah. All right, people. Well, I'm back to the end of the chat, so let me know. I mean, I've already ranted about 1D. I don't want to talk about it too much. I mean, one of my goals for 2023 is to be more positive and focus on the things that I love. Because for whatever reason, I have developed a bit of a reputation for being very negative. And it is true that I'm very critical of some things. But let me assure you, I love role-playing games. They are really, they've been the probably defining characteristic of my life since I was the age of, 9 or 10. So I'm very passionate about them, and I love them very much. And I'm actually really positive about them. I actually really love role-playing games. In fact, I think everybody should be playing them, and I think there's a game for everybody, and I think we should all be embracing them, and I think we should all be, sort of expanding the scopes and horizons. But, I think part of this is that, I've been focused on one game, Pathfinder 2, for almost 2 years now, straight, and we've talked about a couple games here and there. And Pathfinder 2, look, in the history of all these role-playing games on the back of my shelf, it's a fine game. It is not as good of a game as a lot of people think it is. And that's not a knock against it, okay? It's not a knock against it. Number one, it's a D&D game. By definition, it's kind of a generic one-size-fits-all. And one-size-fits-all doesn't really mean one-size-fits-all, right? It just kind of means it fits everyone, but badly. There might be a percentage of people for whom it is literally the perfect and ideal game, especially if you have a very broad group with varying interest levels in role-playing games in general, in combat versus non-combat. If you have this very widely mixed group of people, that could be an ideal game. Same with 5th edition, by the way. If you have a group, if you are one of those people who says, I don't have anybody to play with, I need to play a game that is going to get bodies at the table, then D&D and Pathfinder are great choices because they are more popular and you are going to get better buy-in from people for those reasons. And they're not bad games. I've spent the majority of my life playing D&D and D20 and certainly the last 2 years playing pretty much mostly Pathfinder 2. But 20 years from now or whatever, 30 years from now, when I'm, approaching the, if not the end of my life, I'm approaching, my dotage. And I look back at 50 plus years of gaming, 60 years of gaming. It is very unlikely that is going to be one of the games that just stands out to me and says, wow, there was a game. Now, again, it's fine, it's fun, it's great, play it. If I get frustrated with the game ever, it's because there were so many opportunities for them to do something different with it, and they didn't, in the name of, appeasing everybody and trying to be the least objectionable option. And I don't like that. I don't want to say it's cowardly, but it's cowardly. It's probably driven by capitalism, and that's okay, because these are companies that got to make money. And Pathfinder 2 seems to have sold very well. I think they're going to continue to hopefully sell even more as the Fallout, quote unquote Fallout, which is being generated by the very same people. Like, what are these people going to do? They've built their whole careers around 5th edition D&D. They're going to shit talk 5th edition D&D. Everyone's going to leave D&D and go to Pathfinder 2. What are suddenly these people are going to become Pathfinder 2 channels? I will hold myself. Stop there. Point is, it's a fine game. Play it. It's great, but it's not that great. I think we should all just stop pretending that it is. Yeah. It's not a knock on the game. It's a knock on the obsessed fan base. That is true. I'm going to go out here and say, you know what? Yeah, Ginny D was probably right. Ginny D was right. Y'all are very annoying, and you just need to shut up, because guess what? The cure to everybody's 5th edition ailments is not Pathfinder 2nd edition. And the amount of evangelism and an apologism that goes on in the name of this game, it baffles me. You would think that these people had stock in Paizo, and they don't. You know what they have? You know what they want? Validation. That's all. They're just looking for validation, right? Everybody else was getting hyped up about 5th edition, and they were playing Pathfinder, and they had that brief moment because they said, boy, maybe I should have been playing 5th edition D&D. It'd be a lot easier to find groups. It'd be a lot easier to find game masters. It'd be look at how much third-party content they have. Everything on Kickstarter is for fucking 5th edition. I feel so neglected here. Did I make a mistake? And so you cling to that. You build that as part of your identity. You're like, no, I picked the better game. They're sheeples. They don't know what they're missing. And now suddenly people are like, oh, 5th edition is bad. And this is sort of their moment to sort of feel like, yeah, I knew what was going on beforehand. I made the switch. And now they can become validated. And it's sad. It really is sad. Why do you care what other people play? It makes no sense. Doesn't matter. I don't care what you play. I really don't care what you play. I mean, should you try Apocalypse World or, Powered by the Apocalypse game? Sure, I think that'd be fun. I think you would enjoy it. Do I care what you play? No, I don't give a shit. I don't publish games. Paizo cares if you play Pathfinder 2. Why any of us do, I couldn't even begin to tell you. All right. So when is NightCon 2023? Well, it would probably have to be in the fall, John. I would imagine that'd be the soonest we could probably do a NightCon. NightCon 1 might be like it might be NightCon : Session 0. Gossamer Chain says it's dinner time. Have a great night. Thanks for the great chat as always. Gossamer Chains, thank you very much for that healthy donations of Electrum and gold pieces. They will certainly add to the coffers of the Knights of Last Call as we seek to fight against ignorance and bad campaigns. Thank you, Gossamer. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you so much. But NightCon, the first NightCon might actually be like NightCon : Session 0. It might be sort of like a trial run with just some of our most, most dedicated and highest engaged folks, people that we trust, people that we know aren't gonna, because setting something up like that, a lot of logistical issues and people can get really difficult to work with. And I'm not trying to say that like it'll be a nightmare, but it could be tricky. It could be tricky. And I've never done anything like that. And so it's like it'd be nice to be able to like almost do like a dress rehearsal before we did the real thing, right? Like a session 0 to make sure that everything went, as expected. And then once we have those systems in place, then it's just an issue of scalability. And then we can just scale it so that, we can go from 25 people to 50 or 75 people, right? Or even 100 people. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. What are your thoughts on separate systems for combat versus roleplay versus kingdom magic within the same system? Well, for starters, Mike, remember, I think everything is role-playing. Even in combat, you're role-playing your character. You're making decisions they would make. So, I know that's a pedantic point, but I understand what you're saying. I don't know. There are game systems that have done it. A game system that was created 12 years ago called Strike, which you can get on DriveThruRPG, tried to do just that. It tried to have a very narrative, almost powered by the apocalypse style, non-combat resolution system, and then it used kind of a very tactical grid mini 4th edition Pathfinder 2 style combat resolution. But one of the most important things about it, which I think is really important, is that it allowed you to resolve combats using that tactical minis combat, but you could also resolve a combat. Maybe it wasn't so important, or maybe your group just didn't like that. It gave you the tools to also resolve that combat using that sort of really vague, abstract system. But fundamentally, I think it's really interesting, and I do like it. So I'm kind of in there. I like it. That's what I would say, Mike. I think it's an interesting design space, and I know that I personally would like to explore it. Especially the ability to handle combats in different ways. Like, for example, right behind me.
Anonymous tipped $150.
Well,
Merry Christmas from
Anonymous dropping an absolutely massive tip from the Overlord. I don't even know who that actually is. Well, thank you very much for that incredibly awesome and just supremely generous tip. I hope you have an incredible Christmas as well. And thank you very much for your support, whoever you may be. That is very, very generous of you, and I appreciate it. Wow, nice. We'll give him a strong.
I am strong, strong, strong.
Not only is Santa Claus in the chat with that $150 tip from Anonymous, Santa Claus is going to be back on the stream on Thursday, by the way. Just as a reminder, Thursday is going to be a special live stream. We're going to have Aaron and Bob, along with 3 patrons, Damien and Vin, who you met during our Leshy stream. And we're going to be joined by one of our oldest patrons, Donnie, who are going to be the 5 Poppets who are going to be taking on the fury of Santa Claus. That's right. The Poppets are going to be trying to take back Christmas. We're going to be doing that Thursday. It's going to be it's going to be kind of a, let's call it what it is. It's going to be a clusterfuck, but it's going to be zany and a lot of fun. I'm sure the guys are going to be drinking. I'm sure there's going to be some nonsense and craziness in the chat. But more importantly, Santa is very giving. There's going to be prizes for the people in the chat. We are going to be playing We're going to be playing Pop It Pathfinder Bingo in the chat. Everyone in chat's going to get a bingo card, and as things happen in the stream, you mark off your bingo card. If you get bingo, guess what? You win a prize. Knight's Last Call is going to buy you something from Santa Claus. Maybe a role-playing game book. Maybe a gift certificate to Drive Through RPG. That's right. Just watching the live stream could win you a prize. And you get to play bingo for free. It's incredible. We'll be taking that anonymous tip and we'll just be giving... Literally, this is how Knight's Last Call works. This is how our business model works. Wow. That is a very generous tip. Thank you so very much. Hey, Bob and Aaron, people who, work for me and do stuff for me. We just got some money in. What should we do with it? How about, I don't know, we buy 6 $25 gift certificates to Drive Through RPG and give them away on our next live stream. Sounds good to me. And then that's what we do. Don't run a business like I do. I'm just very bad at this. Yeah, the Pathfinder Pop It program, playing for prizes. Very good, very good. So there we go. Gid says they'll be back in the States by fall 2023. Maybe they can join us. Well, Gid, if you're there, there's a spot for you, buddy. What do you think of A5E making exploration challenges and experience gaining system alongside of combat? Well, I mean, yes. Whatever your game's about, it should have mechanics to support. As an example, Legend of the Five Rings, right behind me here, is a game about samurai drama, which could mean epic clashes between wars of wuxi. It could mean the stare down of an intense political struggle in an imperial courtroom. And so the game gives you mechanics and options and crunchy bits to do things like mass combats and duels and social intrigues. The game leans into those. Well, if your D&D game is about exploration, then your game should have meaningful mechanical options and choices and decisions that relate to that tier. Not just, well, what's your overland speed? This is how far you can move in a minute or 10 minutes. That's not a real mechanic. Now, arguably, a lot of D&D campaigns these days aren't really about exploration. They're mostly about, because they're not really about narrative either, because narrative would imply a narrative game would imply that there is a variety of different outcomes, that you could win or you could lose, that you're going to be making choices and decisions that are going to steer the outcome in a myriad of different ways. If you're just talking in character and hamming up a scene and chewing on the scenery, and you're just sort of expressing your character as a person, that's not really a game. That could be a lot of fun. And people have spent entire sessions doing what we call fluffy bullshit time. And I don't call it fluffy bullshit time to demean it. I just don't think that that's really a game. I think that could be a fun activity and something that you could really enjoy doing, but it's not a game. And you don't need mechanics for something that isn't a game. But if exploration is a part of your game, then absolutely what Damien said should be true, and we should create mechanics for it, and we should create reward incentive cycles, and we should just be doing the whole thing. That's a lot of P. That'll probably be said during the stream there, GM Scott. Overlord. Overlord. Overlord's over here dropping massive tips from the Overlord. Got it. Now we know. Overlord dropping a massive tip. Well, so our incredibly generous and anonymous benefactor was none other than OLP, as we like to call him. And should have known, buddy. And I don't know why I missed that. From the Overlord. I just thought it's from Overlord. I was like, who's Overlord? I was like, from the Overlord. Thank you. Yeah, you thought it might give it away. You know what? Went right over my head, buddy. But to answer your question there, OLP, did you watch Matt Colville's latest video on the reasons for fighting? I did. And again, most of the time, I like Matt Colville. Most of the time. I like what he has to say about the games. I like what he has to say about role-playing games. Sometimes he can be a little too story-focused for me. But a couple things about that he said. Number one, I agree with him, actually. I don't necessarily know that I agree with everything that he said in that video, but I do agree with him. Now, my take on this is a little differently. I believe that people should run away. I think that this issue of combats getting stale is totally legitimate. And I've long said that I think that combats should, escalate in, sort of grow in tension. And then once you reach the peak of that tension and you sort of cross through it, boom, the combat should end within a round or two. Ideally 1 round, honestly. In like a classic D&D situation, I don't mean to get too mechanical here, but in a classic D&D situation, you might have an encounter versus, let's say, 12 goblins. And that's way too many goblins. If you now that's scary. That's like a scary amount of goblins. And mathematically, if you were to have to fight all of those goblins, and they fought to the bitter end, to the last goblin was dead, they would almost certainly kill the party, or, certainly take them out. But you don't want to do that. So modern games say, okay, don't throw 12 goblins at the party, throw 4 goblins at the party. The problem is, if you throw 4 goblins at the party, that's a joke. It's not scary, because 4 goblins, even if they fight to the bitter end, which in most people's campaigns they do, will never be enough to really risk hurting the party or taking them out. So that doesn't really work, because the tension starts low, and then as soon as you kill 1 or 2 of the 4 goblins, the tension almost goes to 0, and now you're just in cleanup mode. So there was never really any tension to begin with, and it didn't really go anywhere. And as soon as the party kills 1 or 2 of those 4 goblins, the fight might as well be over. It's a joke. It's done. They were barely a threat when there was 4 of them. Now there's only 3. Now there's only 2. So the fight's over. But if we started with 12 of them, we know that 12 would kill us. It would just wipe us out. And it's very scary. And the amount of damage that's going to come out of them is very, very scary. So the tension starts here, very high, which is where we want it. Boom, the fight is on, and oh my God, it's scary. And the goblins are pressing in. Maybe the tension even ratchets up a little bit. And then we kill 1 or 2 of them. Now before, when there were only 4 goblins, that took the tension from very low to 0. But now the tension's here, and we're about to die. We kill a couple of them, but that's 2 of 12. There's still 10 left. Now the tension drops a little bit. But 10 goblins, and we've been fighting for 2 rounds or 3 rounds, we're definitely going to die. But we kill 1 more, maybe 2 more, and the fight's still really scary. But now it feels winnable, and the tension starts to drop, and they fail a morale check, and they run away. And what ends up happening is your tension of your combat started high, reached a fever pitch, the party fought their way back, started to drop the tension a little bit, and as soon as the tension dropped a little bit and it started to feel like the party was starting to gain the advantage, both physiologically in the game, but also simulationist, verisimilitude in the world, the people, the goblins, say, I'm out, and then they run away. But that also saves you and your group the tedium and the boredom of having to spend the next several rounds riding this ever de-escalating tension down to zero. Because the fight was fun and cool when it was really scary and touch and go, but then once the fight started to turn into your favor, now it becomes a grind, or a slog, as Matt Colville called it. And he's right to call it that. But I'm saying it's not about necessarily why you're fighting. I mean, sure, having reasons to fight is great, but ultimately, it's about avoiding the slog. It's about keeping the fight exciting. And the fight is exciting when it could go either way. And creatures are smart. Creatures aren't usually going to fight to the death, so they're going to run away. I was just listening to a video. I subscribe to a channel called Invictus. Talks about old, mostly Roman history, and they were talking about death in the Roman army, and they were talking about how for a good period of time in the Roman army, actually, not that many people died. The only time people really died in the Roman army is if like you had an undisciplined, complete rout, and your unit, completely disobeyed, completely abandoned unit coherency, ran away and got like run down and chopped down. But honestly, a lot of battles were decided. I mean, think about something like World War II, and the landings on D-Day at Omaha Beach, which is, I visited Omaha Beach when I was in high school. I had the opportunity to go to France. It was incredible. I'll never forget it. But something like, 30,000 or something American soldiers landed on Omaha Beach. And I want to say that there was maybe, a few. Okay, there was 2,000 to 3,000 casualties. Now, don't get me wrong. That's, 2,000 to 3,000 men is a huge number. Out of 43,000 infantry, though. Like, that's 10%. And that was considered outrageous losses. That is the peak of, that's 1 in 10 chance that you got killed there. Or at least suffered a wound. Insane levels of casualties. But we play these role-playing games, and somehow these mercenary, evil creatures, these weedy little creatures, these animals, all fight to the death. Just doesn't even make sense. But it's not even a simulationist thing. It's also kind of a game thing. Fighting these monsters down to the bitter end is boring. So I did watch it. I thought it was a great video. And yeah, GM Scott pointing me out saying 5%. Sure, it could be 5%. Yeah, 2,000 out of 43,000, it's 5%. So realistically, if you had 10 goblins in a room and one of them gets killed, and then another one gets killed, they have taken 20% casualties. That is more than the U.S. soldiers took in terms of percentages landing at Omaha Beach on D-Day. And these are supposed to be, and those were some of the bravest men who's ever lived, ever, doing with incredible discipline and incredible fortitude. We're talking about goblins? They're going to stay and fight to the death? I don't think so. So I think it's both fun from a game perspective, and I think it's also fun, or it makes sense from a reality perspective, and it just opens up the whole game space. And I think that's the solution to the slog. But what I will say, and I don't want to, I do, because I love Overlord. But the other thing that I want to bring up about that, I like what Matt said. He said, I don't really know that I have a great answer to this. Obviously, cool monsters helps. Matt, I'm doing Matt here. I'm making a monster book, so of course I'm saying the monster should be better. I do a horrible Matt Colville impersonation. But I like that he said, I don't necessarily know that I have a great solution to it, because this is kind of an endemic problem to the system. So, yeah, I did watch it. I did enjoy it. I thought he made some great points, and I thought that him saying, I also don't have a great solution, was also itself a great answer as well. So, yeah. KC is on vacation. Time has no meaning. Loved it. Love it. Love it. I don't know if it's PF2 or my GM, but our fights are insanely fun and exciting. That sounds like a lot of fun. Certainly, I think your GM probably deserves a fair bit of kudos. Hopefully, one would say that you players are making it fun and exciting. But, Chris, I will also say that Pathfinder 2 is also sort of designed to evoke that feeling. Even if it's not necessarily true. There are a lot of old school things that really make the D20 system tick a lot better, worth checking out. Yeah, remember, at the end of the day, Pathfinder 2, 5th edition games that we like to play, I mean, the DNA there really goes back to like what Blaine is talking about with the chainmail. It goes back to OD&D and the original Little Brown books. We haven't changed that much from that time period. And, you know, now these elements are sacred cows and we can't change them. But back then, they were just, you know, they were changing things left and right because it was a brand new game. Nobody gave a crap. If something didn't work, they would have changed it. Bruin says, what about World War I? Look at those casualties, both sides. I'm sure they're even horrendous. But, correct me if I'm wrong, Bruin, I was using Omaha Beach because it was specifically a one-day, literally one morning-long engagement. Some of those World War I battles took place over the course of months and, you know, I think in some cases, years. And so I would expect the casualties to be much higher. Also, casualties doesn't necessarily mean killed, right? Casualty also means combatant incapable of fighting. So someone who gets injured and has to be taken off the line is a casualty. But I'm sure you know that. Overlord, probably only undead would fight to the end, I guess. Overlord, that's correct. Undead and constructs were traditionally the only creatures in original D&D that did not have to check for morale. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why undead were so scary, is because they didn't run away. In fact, they were so scary that in original D&D, that was what Turn Undead did. Essentially, Turn Undead from the cleric made undead have to take a morale test. In fact, a level 1 cleric in original D&D, or even in old school Essentials D&D, doesn't have a spell. They didn't even get a spell until second level. The only thing clerics got at first level was Turn Undead. But that's because you were playing a game system that sort of was based around or assumed that creatures would not fight to the bitter end. They would fail a morale check and then run away. But undead didn't do that, and that made them very, very scary because they would fight to the bitter end, and that could be really, really deadly for you, especially in that game system. So having a cleric who could make them flee was a huge deal and a massive lifesaver. Lifesaver, not lightsaber. Jesus Christ. Ryan, low intelligent animals to me should run almost immediately. I know a lot of people go, but what about the mama bear defending her cubs? Fine. Within reason, animals are still animals and they will flee, number one. Number two, fine. If the mama bear wants to defend her cubs, I think that's really interesting and they can do that. But most of the time it's like, oh, the wolves attack you. You know what happened? The wolves will attack you. They'll spring at the sides. If they don't like kill somebody or drag you away right away, they're just going to run away. And most of the time, if you go back to 2nd edition or 1st edition D&D, animals had very low morale scores. And what this meant is that as soon as an animal got hurt, or as soon as an animal maybe got exposed to something like fire, you would make that morale check, and guess what? They were probably going to fail it and run away, because that's kind of what animals would do. In fact, not to go off on a whole thing here, but part of the, we talk about old school D&D, combat as war. Part of the idea of original D&D, in a way, remember, fighting didn't help you at all in original D&D. Remember, what gets rewarded gets repeated. And vice versa, right? If something's not giving you a reward, ideally, you want to avoid it. Combat was twice as bad because it didn't really give you a reward, but it could also kill you. So it was just like the worst thing that you could possibly do. So a lot of times what you were trying to do in those combat situations, and by the way, this is kind of true for pretty much every army that has ever existed ever, is you didn't really care about killing these people. You just wanted them to run away. And I am not by any sort of means an evangelist for the old school games. I understand that some of the mechanics are clunky and, you know, it's lacking some of the crunchy finesse that we like about our modern games. But going back to my example about the wolves, in an old school game, if a bunch of wolves attacked you and I had like a torch and I'm, you know, waving it around in front of me, in front of the torch, or maybe I even burn a wolf, most of the time, and I maybe talk about it, my GM will probably say, yeah, I'll make a morale save right off the bat, a morale check. And the wolves go, this guy's got fire. I'm not messing with that. I run away into the woods because, yeah, like, man has fire, scared. They're not easy prey. They're not a deer. There's fire. I'm afraid of fire. I run away. And that's it. That's the end of the story. I mean, there are instances in the original D&D when magic was a little bit more, rare, that just using magic could force at certain enemies to make a morale check because they're like, oh, I don't mess with that. It's time to flee. Mighty Dave, has Derek rated any archetypes yet? Mighty Dave, tonight is not an archetype ranking. Sorry. Usually our archetype rankings are Thursdays. But tonight is not an archetype ranking. Sorry, buddy. Tonight is just a TTRPG hangout. But we are going to be getting back to the archetypes here as we move through the holiday season and into January. I was looking at some of the things. There's a lot in Pathfinder. They put a lot of stuff at the beginning of the alphabet, but there's not as much once we get past the M's. So I'm hoping that it's probably only going to take us, I want to say, another 6 to 7 episodes to finish all the archetypes. But I'm not, that's it. We're not doing items, or I don't even know what else there would be to do in Pathfinder 2. But we're not doing feats. So we'll do archetypes and then we'll end it there. So what if you're Liam Neeson? Well, all right, things might be different. Brune, I've just started my own Rise of the Runelords campaign. I've just passed 10,000 words for my introduction. Help, am I doing it wrong? That's a lot of words, Brune. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think you can just kind of go right into it, right? I mean, what are you trying to set them up there? What do they really need to know? I mean, Rise of the Runelords, and the whole idea of the premise of it is that nobody knows about the Runelords, that they're sleeping, that the people of Sandpoint don't even know what their village is on top of and what it used to be a part of, and all of the craziness that is literally at their feet. And so, you know, I think part of the fun of the Rise of the Runelords is that idea of the party becoming aware of it. I think they play it a little bit too close to the chest, but you know, I think that you could have fun with that. That's really interesting about Turn Undead. I did not know that. There you go. Yeah, a first level cleric got, well, for starters, like a fighter, they could wear any type of armor. So a first level cleric could wear heavy armor. They could wear chainmail or scale or even plate. Not that you could ever afford that at first level, but they could wear it. They could use shields. But so they had the best armor in the game, just like the fighter. So right off the bat in old school D&D, that meant they were pretty strong, defensive warrior type. Remember, there were no feats or anything like that, so there really wasn't a whole lot that made you a fighter versus made you. In fact, the only thing that the fighter got, they could use any armor, they could use any weapon. That's it. There was nothing else that they got. So the cleric got that, and then they had the ability to turn undead. And again, it was so useful because undead were just so damn scary, and they didn't run away. Let's see. I've been using enemy runs away a lot when it seems logical, and my players hate it 100% of the time, even if the combat has been going on forever. Haha. Yeah, I mean, this is a problem in modern gaming. I agree with you. I agree with you. It is a problem. Hey, we got a super chat. OSE open box when? I love the emphasis on you are out of your league, son. Phoenix Trinity. Actually, they are sitting up on my shelf. They're out of the FedEx box. But what I want to do, Phoenix, because they're gorgeous books. Even if you don't want to play OSE, they're gorgeous books. I want to get a camera and I want to mount it. So I have my camera here and I want to get one of my second cameras, one of my backup cameras, and I want to mount it right here and have it look down. And I want to be able to do a book opening. I don't know why. You all tell me. I feel like going through the real book is, for me, maybe more satisfying than just doing a PDF. Maybe I'm crazy about this, but these books are gorgeous. I love the luster of the feel of the paper, and I'd love to do it. So, and I have plenty of cameras because it's nice last call. So yeah, I definitely want to do that. And Phoenix, I'm going to try to get that set up here. If not, probably not December, but we'll probably do it in January or do OSE because I'd love to talk about OSE. We're going to be giving away a box set of OSE apparently on Thursday because Pawn No Longer, Damian Williams, had an extra copy and wants to donate it and give it away to some lucky person in the stream. So we're just giving, it's Christmas miracle. We're just giving away everything. But thank you very much for the chat, and we'll OSE soon. I look forward to it. Am I going to go back and rate any new spells and archetypes that get released? I mean, that would last forever, Chris. Maybe we'll do some crazy tip goal. And if somebody really wants us to go back and do that, we will. We can figure out what we missed. But at a certain point, it's kind of reductive. I don't think we're ever going to keep that list 100% up to date. But yeah, we could probably do that at some point in the far future. Look, Nonat did 2 archetypes, and then he quit Pathfinder 2. He didn't quit Pathfinder 2 for good, but he did 2 archetypes, and then he quit Pathfinder 2. I get it. Those are tough streams. And, obviously it took us something like, I don't even remember, 22, 23, 24, 30. I don't even remember how many streams it was to get through all the spells. And it took us 3 or 4 streams to get through the classes. And now it's taken us 4 or 5 streams just to get through the G's or the H's on the archetypes. It's a lot of work. So, Tip goal to review Impossible Lands. Not anytime soon, Gid. You'll try to show up for the Thursday show. You should. It's going to be a complete clusterfuck and absolute disaster. It's going to be great. I actually have a lot of work to do. Tomorrow, tonight after the stream, tomorrow, I got to get everything set up in Foundry for this. I got to, I had my patrons. We did a contest. They got to build the poppets. We picked winners, and now they are going to be. I got to put those characters into the Foundry and then load the maps and put some monsters, the monsters in there. So it'll be fun. That is much more reasonable, Boothby. That is much more reasonable. But should every encounter be winnable? How should GMs handle unwinnable encounters? Well, Bruno, let me give you an example of something. I just played 5th edition D&D. We played for 10 or 11 sessions, and actually we ran through. We picked this up, or I picked this up, and I have played Keep on the Borderlands, the Caves of Chaos, more times than I care to count. And I'll be honest with you, I've never played a group through the whole thing. I've played it for a couple of sessions. I've played a lot of it with Dungeon World at like conventions as sort of a fun one-shot. I'll just whip out Caves of Chaos and we'll just go have fun with it. But I've never actually had a group try to like take out or take on the whole cave system. And we did that. Now, we played 5th edition, and this is from Goodman Games. This is their 5th edition translation of it. But in full honesty, we did not really play 5th edition. In fact, this is this is the character sheet here that I made for our 5th edition game. We called it Dungeon Time Extreme. It had some wonky house rules and home rules, but the point is, but it was still fundamentally 5th edition. People were fighters and clerics and bards. And we just played for like several months. We played most Fridays. We missed a few Fridays here and there, but we played for 10, 11, 12 sessions. I don't know how. I'm admitting to you right now. I don't know how to build a 5th edition counter. I never looked up the rules for it, even once. Somebody told me they were bad, and I believed them, so I ignored them. I had no idea what I was throwing at my party. If I rolled a random encounter and there were ghouls, I would look at the number in the book, which is an old school book, and I would say 2d10 ghouls appear, and I would roll 2 10-sided dice in front of the party. Sometimes I would have the party roll them themselves, and if 19 ghouls were there, then 19 ghouls were there. I don't know. That could have been a CR27. I don't know. Didn't really care, honestly. If it was too much for them, then they needed to try to run away and do something, or I don't know, throw a dead corpse and let the ghouls eat it while they flee away, or use some magic, or turn and flee, or maybe they just all die and they shouldn't have been there in the first place. Point is, I didn't know. I didn't actually care. I didn't care whether the encounter was winnable or unwinnable. They could have come in and it could have been this big thing, and there were 2 ghouls, and the party just laughed and killed them all. In fact, there was an encounter that they had previously against a group of gnolls in the Gnoll Caves, which were very close to the evil shrine of chaos, evil undead. And they killed a bunch of gnolls, just a bunch of gnolls. And then they left, and they left these dead bodies, dozen dead bodies, just laying out there in the middle of the dungeon. And they came back to the dungeon like a week later. And I randomly rolled an encounter, and because I knew the dead bodies were there, I was like, oh, there's definitely a pack of ghouls feasting on these gnolls. So I said, and there's a lot of gnoll bodies. I'm going to roll like 3d10 for the gnoll, for how many ghouls there are. I rolled 3d10. It was a ton of ghouls. So many ghouls. And you know what happened? We're playing old school. I'm like, there's like 5 ghouls. Essentially, in D&D terms, there were like 5 ghouls in a 5-foot square. Because there's like a dead gnoll body there. There's like 5 ghouls, all ripping it apart. You can imagine 5, emaciated, horrible skin stretched tight over their face, ripping their, like a vulture with their head stuck down into the creature's guts, which are rotting and putrid and spewing with pus and ooze, just gross. So these things were pretty densely packed. And you know what? The group went in there. They used a bunch of like thunder waves and shock waves. They killed like all 30 ghouls in like 1 or 2 rounds. They just like, the ghouls were all stacked up. Everybody had a bunch of AoEs. The front line was able to hold and kind of keep the ghouls from being able to press their numerical advantage, and they wiped them all out. And guess what? I didn't care. It didn't matter to me. They weren't really getting experience points for killing monsters anyways. So it didn't matter to me. They only really got the money. The only way they really got experience was by getting treasure. So fighting monsters just didn't really matter to me. But I also didn't care that there were 30 of them. So I guess my advice is don't care about it. The only problem with an unwinnable or a winnable encounter is when you, the game master, have an agenda. And that's okay. Maybe you do have an agenda, like you have a plan. I want my party to do this, and then I want my party to do that, and then I want my party to do this. I don't recommend that style of play. Maybe it works really well for you and your group, in which case, keep doing it. But what works well for me, and what I would encourage you to try, is to not have any plan. Then it doesn't matter. There's no such thing as an unwinnable fight, because no fight, needs to be won in order for the game to continue. So yeah. Yes, Phoenix, Thursday stream with the giveaway and other prizes is the Poppet stream. Yeah. Derek calling what I did to 5e 5e is like Vin calling what he does to Pathfinder 2. You're not wrong. 5e plus. I think the 5e extreme. We used to say that. We used to go Dungeon Time Extreme. Have I ever played Magical Industrial Revolution? Carson, I have not played that game, nor have I ever heard of that game. Now, Phoenix, I do agree with that. This shouldn't be a surprise to your players. You shouldn't be trying to subvert their expectations. You should have a very clear understanding with your group. Hey, this is how monsters and encounters work in my game. They might run away. There might be 100 of them. You might run away. You're not supposed to beat everything. You're not supposed to fight everything. And it doesn't matter whether you do or you don't. You need to have goals, and your job should be to pursue those goals using your character to do so. If challenges get in your way, then you should try to overcome them, but not every challenge is going to be overcomeable. We're playing with dice as well, so that throws in a whole other set of circumstances like good luck or bad luck. And you should just make sure that you are communicating to that, because throwing what I described at hey, we like playing 5th edition D&D. Come sit down at my table. Let's play some D&D. And then I throw 30 ghouls at you. Could be a bad run for those people. Because I want everyone to have a good time. And it's more of like, you should just be expecting for these things to happen. And, if you don't have fun with that after I made my expectations clear, that's on you. That's not on me. That's on you. Have you ever done collaborative world Matthew, you must be late, but yes. Have you ever done collaborative world building with your players? Yes, many times, all the time. It's great. I like using Microscope for that. I like using Dawn of Worlds for that. Those are my two main favorite ways to do it. But even taking a step back, using things like the NPC, the player backstory cards, which are available on DriveThruRPG. They have blue backs. I think maybe they're called story background cards. Let's see what they're called. They're from Galileo Games. They're called backstory cards. They have a couple different sets. There's a main set, and then there's a couple expansions that are sort of more genre or theme specific. I view that as a form of collaborative world building, because you're using these things and the players are drawing, things from the deck, and you build a grid of themes and ideas about your campaign, and then the players, through these backstory cards, connect their characters either as themselves or as groups or as pairs, and they connect them to these various elements of your game grid, and it's a very effective tool. I really like the backstory cards and the backstory card process from Galileo Games. That's really good. So I've done that a bunch of times. And then play a system of Fate's World, like Fate or Worlds Without Number. I own WWN, but Fate works really great. I've done it with Fate. I've done it with 13th Age. I've done it with Mutants and Masterminds. I've done it with Blades in the Dark. I've done it with a bunch of game systems. So yeah, it's a great process. I'm a big fan. I believe in that process very heavily. Let's see, where do we go? Here we go. Ghouls die, the party leaves to come back, now they fight skeletons. I love it. That would be classic. And the party would be like, you know what? We should have expected this. Kill the skeletons, come back and fight ghosts. Yeah, we just do this. Have I ever seen Colville's Dust campaign? I have not, actually. I don't really watch any of their Colville, MCDM. I don't watch any of their campaign stuff or anything like that. That's just not really my take. And hey, we made it to the end of the chat again. That's pretty great. And it is 9:15. So we're probably going to start wrapping up here. So if you have any final questions or thoughts, I mean, obviously sometimes we go a little bit further than this if people have some really great questions or anything like that. But if you want to throw a super chat or tip, ask me one last question or two. Happy to do that. But, I will say, if you've been enjoying this stream and maybe some of these rants, let me just reiterate. 5th edition is not going to die. 6th edition is going to be fine. It's going to be very much what the game that you've already been playing. And all of these creators who are just trying to get clicks are kind of full of it. And any creator that is bitching about D&D asking you for monthly payments to play it, but then also has a Patreon that has a monthly fee, be kind of suspect for it. For example, I want you to join my Patreon. I think you should really benefit from it. I think there's a lot of cool, fun stuff in there. I think our exclusive Discord, which is only available to members of our Patreon, is really great. I think you're getting a lot of value for that, and thus I do not feel bad asking you for $5 or $10 or $25 a month, depending on what level of access you want to have. I think it's a good value, and I don't have a problem asking you for that. If you're getting great value out of a product and they're asking you for money for that, okay. I mean, that's the way the transaction works. Or they sell you a book. If I sold you a book and I said, hey, this is $90 or $70 and you buy it and you say, good, I got the book. Great, cool. We've done business. We've exchanged value. But but D&D is not here to entertain you. It's not here to serve you. It's there to sell games. You may not agree with their monetization efforts, but, for somebody who is also asking you for money, then complaining about somebody else asking for you for money, that seems a little silly to me. Matt Colville talked about using Kingdom and Microscope in his Wes Marches video, and I was really interested in doing that for my own. That is interesting. Because I don't know how much I guess Kingdom is a bit more. I mean, it's by, does it say where it is? Yeah, here it is. It's by Ben Robbins as well. It's a little bit more of a specific game than Microscope is. Microscope really allows you to create a whole wide-ranging world and timeline from, the age of creation of the universe to modern day. Kingdom is a little bit more tightly focused about a specific thing, a community. You could do Battlestar Galactica is Kingdom. You could do certainly a Kingdom as Kingdom, or a Old West Town, or a Fallout shelter, a la, New Vegas. So Kingdom is an interesting choice. I never really thought about using it as a campaign creator, but I could see where there's similarities to it. I guess I'll take that back. Are there any mini games or mechanics you would borrow from another game to handle a PC versus PC brawl? No. I really don't know. I mean, I don't know why a PC versus PC brawl would be any different. I'm assuming you're talking about D20. I mean, there's some games of PBTA which have rules and for resolving player versus player actions, but those games are doing very different things with their mechanics. In a standard D20, I don't know about that. Any tip goals for the Poppet stream? Haven't thought of them yet, Gid. Have not thought about them. Did I miss your answer about the 13th Age play? I didn't see your question, GM Scott. I have the 13th Age 2nd edition playtest. I have only briefly skimmed through it. I've been so busy trying to I'll be honest with you people, it's on me. Smith, he's good to go. Ben, Bob, they're good to go. They need my article for our next issue of Battle Cry. So, we wanted to get 3 or 4 episodes, we wanted to get 3 issues minimum. If we could do it, we wanted to get 4 issues out this year. We're going to get 3 out, but that relies on me. So I've been trying to finish my article for Battle Cry, and then we have this Poppet stream, and then going up into this, wrapping up work. So I've not had a chance to really dig into the 13th Age playtest, 2nd edition playtest like I want to. So, hell, Paizo sent us treasure vault, and I need to take a look at that. And they even said we could do a video about it as sort of a pre-release, which I think would be a lot of fun. And I haven't gotten through that yet either. So, okay, well, that makes sense, Frostjack. That sounds like what Kingdom would do. And Points of Light style worlds. Points of Light, it's my favorite type of campaign. 4th edition did it best. Sorry. Points of Light is how like every campaign should be world ever. For D&D. For like that sort of traditional, heroic, dungeon adventure, scary place, you know. Other RPGs do this really well too. Torchbearer, Mouse Guard, Root, they all learn from this, and they have a game world where, you know, the world is a patchwork of points of light, little dots of civilization, and in between are the monster-haunted wildernesses and ruins of past civilizations. And it is only adventurers who have the skill, the luck, the daring, the courage, the moxie to go out and go to these scary places and travel through these sort of forbidden lands. I think that's, for me, that's just so evocative, and that's just so D&D, and that's just so badass. I love it. Points of Light is great, but I prefer Point of Light. That's interesting, but I prefer Points of Light. I do prefer Points of Light. What is Points of Light? So one of the core conceits of 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons was this sort of vaguely defined campaign world. It wasn't like Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or Kryn or Athos or any of these other, you know, traditional campaign settings. You know, they used some terms and terminology, but they never really gave you any sort of firm map, and it was more about the idea of it. The idea of Points of Light is just that you have a map. Think of it like a fog of war, and most of the map is dark. And there's a few places, you know, city-states or, you know, an armored, a walled fortress town or a small, tiny barony that's able to, you know, keep maybe within a day's ride around the central keep safe enough for homesteaders and farms. But outside of that, it's scary. It's post-apocalyptic, but without the sort of doom and gloom and radioactive waste. It's sort of like the Dark Ages. It's a little bit like civilization used to be this much more impressive golden thing, which is why we have dungeons filled with wealth and places full of adventure and ripe for exploration. Because if your world is like, it's all the borders are drawn, everything is known, it's just like, what is the role of the adventurer in that world where you have massed armies and well-regulated militias that can, like, oh, there's a monster in the hills. Oh, well, we have thousands of men and hundreds of mounted soldiers, and we have tons of high-level wizards. It's like, why is this a problem? It shouldn't be a problem. When you have a very industrialized nation-state level in your campaign world, I personally feel like adventurers don't have a lot to do. If you look at Golarion, and you look at maybe like Pathfinder 1 Golarion, like pre-New Thassalon, like if you look at Varesia, I really like Varesia because it's kind of a lawless land, not like in an evil way. It just, there aren't really any organized kingdoms. There's a couple of isolated sort of city-states like Magnamar or Corvosa, maybe. I might be getting that one wrong. And then there's that third one that I don't know what it is. That is very cool to me. That also, and it's built on the bones of an ancient magical civilization of Thassalon. So it's like ripe for adventure. They need adventurers because there's nobody else who's going to be able to tame the wilds and the monsters and the bandits. And, you know, you still have these places of safety and security, but not in a way that, you know, you can walk easily between all these towns. So, Am I describing Forgotten Realms in the north? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, Forgotten Realms has various places that certainly fall into that area. Let me think. I would say, the north is part of it. If you go east of the Sword Coast, but like west of Anarok, like that whole area there around the High Forest, kind of south of the High Forest. But like if you go too far south, you get to like Amn and Tethir and Kalimshan, and those are all just really well-developed nation states. If you go east towards like the Sea of Dragons, and you get into like Sembia and the Vilhound Reach and Cormyr and the Dale Lands and all of the city, maybe the Moon Sea is a little bit city-state-ish. Aglaron is a country, Thay is a country. It's a pretty well-developed ecosystem from all the way from the sea to the Sea of Fallen Stars and south into, the Great Rift and Lurin and Halrua and all those other places in the south, which, to be fair, I don't really know much about Luran or Halurua or the Gold Dwarfs of the Great Rift or any of that other place. I only know a little bit. Anyways, my point is, most of Forgotten Realms is a known quantity, and that can kind of, take some of the mystery out of it. The north is probably one of the areas that's a little bit more, a little unknown. And like I said, west of Anarok, but sort of in that high forest or south of the high forest, that's another area that I think could be really interesting. The Savage Frontier, like Silvery Moon, maybe not anymore in like, I don't know what the modern history is, but like once upon a time, that area around Silvery Moon and Citadel Felbar, like before they rescued Mithril Hall, like that whole Savage Frontier area there, south of the Spine of the World, but north of the High Forest, that was all kind of a great place to adventure. In fact, that's one of my favorite places to adventure in the Forgotten Realms. I think they made a box set for that. I thought I had it maybe behind me, but it looks like I don't. But yeah, they made a Savage Frontier box set. Let's see. I love how you know this fantasy world geography better than I know my own country's real geography. We truly are nerds. Yeah, that checks out. I've been playing Pathfinder and Golarion for 10 years, and I still remember more about Forgotten Realms than Golarion. Same, Booth B. Same. I bet you I was sitting there saying those words and like laying out the geography, and you were like, oh yeah. I totally remember that. Look, take what you like, play what you want. I prefer Forgotten Realms to Golarion. I think Torel is a more interesting and fantastic and evocative setting with cooler areas that don't feel so pastiche together. To me, it is a more believable and real world than anything. I knew where all was. I love it, Booth P. I love it. Oh, we'll have to nerd out about Forgotten Realms sometimes. All right, everybody. Thanks for that walk down memory lane. Thank you again for watching. Check us out. Subscribe, comment, like. Maybe check out the Patreon. If not, be here Thursday. I mean, for no other reason, you might win a free prize. You might win an Old School Essentials box set. You might win a Drive-Thru RPG gift certificate. I think we even have some old Pathfinder prizes that we never gave away. Like I have an unopened box of Primal spell cards. Retail value $25. We'll probably give this away. So come hang out with us. Watch me play some ridiculous Pathfinder with some poppets. Play bingo. Enjoy it. But hopefully we'll see you. And if I don't see you, have a very, very blessed Christmas. Have an incredible Kwanzaa. I believe the first night of Hanukkah was just the other night or 2 nights ago. So have a wonderful remaining nights of Hanukkah. Whatever you believe, or if you don't believe anything, enjoy your holidays. Hopefully you get some time off, or at least some time with your friends and family and loved ones. Do whatever is best for you. Remember, you don't know anyone anything. If what you need to do for your mental health and for your well-being is to hang out and watch old VODs of Knight's Last Call instead of dealing with your toxic family, I I encourage you to make that call because, the number one person in your life, I should say, should be you. So holidays can be a very joyous time, but they can be a very stressful and very depressing time. So I certainly empathize and sympathize with all of you. But I hope that you can use this time for you and, get the benefit out of it that you need to. But hopefully I'll see some of you Thursday. But if I don't, again, have a great Christmas. Have a great remaining holidays. We'll probably do some live streams between Christmas and New Year's. And, we're gonna keep it pretty chill through until the New Year's Eve. So, until the New Year. So, from all of us here at Knights of the Last Call, thank you for joining us. Thank you again to everybody who came out and supported us tonight. Overlord Ferome, thank you so much for your tips, your incredible, generous tip. Thank you for everybody who came out and supported us tonight. Phoenix, Trinity, Mighty Dave, Gossamer Chains, John B, Booth B, Ben A, all of our incredible YouTube members with their beautiful, lovely loyalty badges. Thank you for that. And of course, our incredible Patreon, 270 strong going into 2023. And I am honored and just deeply, deeply proud of each and every one of you. Thank you for being part of our community. We'll see you Thursday. We'll see you next year. We'll see you after Christmas. We'll see you next time. Peace. I need you more.